There is something that many people in the UK grew up believing. I certainly did in the 70s and 80s, 90s. That the UK kind of led the world in laws, standards, and regulations, all this stuff. If I used to believe that if the UK or Britain wrote a rule, it was probably going to be the best rule in the world. You know what I mean? The legal framework, and all the background of it was clear and practical and all that stuff. But somewhere along the line, the belief stopped matching reality because latterly, the UK doesn't just create legislation anymore, it kind of layers it, it adds to it so much. The law gets introduced, then amended, then clarified, then guidance added on top, then interpreted by regulators, then expanded and through case law, then padded with industry. You get best practice and all that stuff. Kind of what starts as a clear principle slowly becomes I'm not going to swear, is like just caveats and clicks and paperwork. And health and safety that I've been in since 1997, maybe earlier if you can go back. I started in leisure industry in 1989, moved into waste in 1997, then moved into construction in 2010. I had a stint in manufacturing, 2018, so on and so on. I've worked in all these areas. Kind of at the central part of what I do is the Health and Safety at Work, etc. Act. Employers need to make sure that their workers are safe, and the worker must take care of themselves as well, duty of care and all that. It's principle-based law that's made the UK basically the global leader on health and safety. But what happened after the law came in, we started layering on top of it. I don't know how many regulations. I think I did a search once, and there was something like, is it between 100 and 300 regulations that link into the Health and Safety, etc. Act? So you got working at height regs, PURE, LOLA, COSH, CDM regs, management regs, RIDDOR, asbestos regs, fire safety order, electrical this, gas that. It just goes on and on. And then you got the guidance documents, approved codes of practice, BSI stuff, industry standards, corporate policies, insurance. By the time it actually reaches the floor, all that simple stuff is gone. Instead of work safety, it becomes stuff, is the ladder been inspected and looked at in the last 7 days? Has that tool been calibrated? Is the risk assessment been written, reviewed, and whatever in the last X period? Is the training refreshed? Is the permit issued? Has the form been signed? It just goes on and on and on. Eventually, obviously, the system's just going to collapse, isn't it? Under its own weight. Because here's the truth. The profession knows it, and this is where I'm coming from. So we know that the companies we work for don't follow every piece of health and safety law. So we're basically speeding. We're basically doing 35 in a 20 all the time, and we're the passenger. If every regulation and every guidance note was applied rigidly, massive parts of industry they'd just stop operating, because everything would grind to a halt under all the paperwork, all the approvals, all the procedural stuff. So what do? What actually happens on the floor? It's like compliance theatre. It's like this, what do they call it? Health and safety debt. Documents are produced, risk assessments are written, method statements are filed, tool inspections are logged. Everyone ticks the boxes, everyone signs the paperwork, but the work continues exactly as it always has, with basically leaders not giving a crap. They just want the job done. They just want the money in the bank, and they'll do as little as possible. I mean, the hierarchy of control, they just start at the bottom. What PPE do we need to get? Hang on a minute. Do we actually need to be working at 5 meters off the ground when there's a window there from the kitchen where the person can just put their arm outside and touch that bit of pipe work? The health and safety professional is always put in an awkward position. The law says one thing, the commercial pressure, as we all know it says something totally different. When the pressure is on, they don't care about health and safety. They don't care if you're wearing your trainers, your boots, your high vis. They don't care. Just get the job done. Deadlines exist, contracts exist. We need to just get it done. I was speaking to a site manager of a small building company today, and they said that they're not going to be on site and back on site until Tuesday. So I said, "Oh well, obviously work will stop then on that site." He said, "No, the few guys that'll be there. There'll only be 6 people on site, but they'll know what to do. They're not really doing any construction work. They've just been doing some other work that I've given them." And I'm like, "Are you joking?" And he came back to me with like, "Well, it's not a problem. They're not really doing anything." I'm just like, I don't work like that. I don't function like that. How can you be the site manager? The project manager's already away in another country. So the site manager said, "Oh, I'm going away. I'll be back on Tuesday," and they'll crack on. I said, "What if somebody knocks on the front door of the build and says, I need to speak to who's in charge?" He came back with understood. I'm like, it's just nuts. The same number of workers are dying every year in the UK. Work-related illness still is growing. Stress, mental health problems, long-term sickness, suicide rates reach levels never seen before. For a system with all this legislation, this much bureaucracy, and this many compliance professionals, shouldn't those figures be coming down? Shouldn't that raise questions in your mind to why is this still so bad? Because if regulatory structure was truly working as it was intended, you'd expect to see improvements. ISO 9001, 14001, 45001. I am a certified, if you like, a lead auditor, qualified, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. So it's continual improvement. That's the ethos. That's the center of ISOs. And we all know those companies that you can pay a little bit of money, you get ISO, and you don't see them from one year to the next. And all they want to do is check your paperwork and give you another certificate for the next year. But we've still got the same figures, the same accidents, and mental health, stress, anxiety going up through the roof. The same patterns showing up in government policy, environmental regulations. It's the same. That thing about the UK contributes kind of a tiny fraction to global emissions. But when, particularly, I know not so much now, but when we used to go into Europe and we'd come back with introducing like sweeping regulatory changes, vehicle standards, fuel changes. Remember we went from 4-star to whatever it was, and we changed the diesel from whatever to whatever. Then we've gone to EVs. And then years later, we'd go back, reverse direction. Diesel was encouraged, then condemned. Electric vehicles were subsidized. Then now we're taxing them. Incentives appear, disappear, then reappear under a different name. It's nuts. Policy moves. Infrastructure lags behind everything else. The public changes only to be told the rules have changed again. From where I'm looking, it looks like, it doesn't look like, like strategic governance. It looks like improvising. When somebody doesn't know what they're doing and they just jump from one thing to the next. I'm not talking about the Labour government. I'm talking about regulators. I'm talking about governments going back to blooming Margaret Thatcher. This is how long, and this is how long the decline has been going on for. The original idea behind safety law was fantastic. It was to set clear principles and allow people to apply them with their own mind, with their own intelligence, with obviously training, information training, etc., etc. But over time, the system's just drifted totally somewhere else. It is just a big, sprawling framework of documentation and kind of managing liabilities that it's just so disconnected from the reality of how things work or how things actually happen in industry out there. I'm not talking about your tier 1 and your tier 2 or your oil or your nuclear side of things or your Rolls-Royce type things or your F1s. That's a different level. I'm talking about the majority of working environments in the UK. The construction, the manufacturing, the transport industries, farming, agriculture, the top 5 where people are getting injured and killed and maimed and long-term sick. And we just carrying on. I just despair, really. And the danger is when all these regulations get so complex, people stop respecting them. And that's what I'm getting at. They don't rebel, not openly anyway. They simply kind of work around them all, which is, what this guy's saying about, I won't be around until Tuesday. He knows. He's got SMSTS, his 25 years doing what he does as site manager. He knows the legislation, he knows what to do properly, but just work around it. He'll probably still make sure the same forms are filled out, files are archived, boxes are ticked. But the risk remains exactly where it always was. And when that happens, the system stops being about safety and starts being about appearances, and it starts being about how it looks, the aesthetics. You turn up on the site, it looks fantastic. Ooh, everything must be in place because it's fantastic. We know, or some of us know as safety people, when you start digging and you find out, have you done a DSC assessments for your people on screens? Oh, no, no, we've not done that. Okay, can I look at your cost register? No, we're a bit behind on that one. Okay, can we look at your last fire evacuation? Oh, no, can we look at your electrical testing? No, and the list goes on, man. But from the outside, it looks fine. I don't know anymore, Somebody help me out. A nation that prided itself on clear, practical kind of ways of doing its safety and managing risks, ending up with something so different, so far from what it was. It's a bit like the NHS. Same thing. It's a regulatory machine so complicated that the people inside it quietly stop believing in it. Like, follow and share, and give me some comments, man, because I'm really in need of it.